ਦ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੋਸਟ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ। ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿਸ ਮੁਲਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹੀਏ ਉੱਥੇ ਦੇ ਲੀਗਲ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਨੂੰ, ਉੱਥੇ ਦੇ ਜੁਡੀਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਣਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ। ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਐਸੇ ਅਟਰਨੀ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹਨ ਜੋ ਕਿ ਨਾ ਸਿਰਫ ਸਾਡੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਲਕਿ ਪੂਰੀ ਨਿਊਯਾਰਕ ਸਟੇਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਨ ਆਫ ਦ ਟੌਪ ਮੋਸਟ ਕ੍ਰਿਮੀਨਲ ਲਾਇਰਸ ਹੈਗੇ। ਆਈ ਵੈਲਕਮ ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਬੇਂਸ ਜੀ। ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ।
Thank you. Let me say to our community, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। It's a pleasure to be here.
ਜੀ, ਅਸੀਂ ਸਭ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੀਏ ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਬੇਂਸ ਜੀ ਸੀਨੀਅਰ ਪਾਰਟਨਰ ਹੈਗੇ ਆਲੀ ਐਂਡ ਬੇਨਸ ਲਾਅ ਫਰਮ ਵਿੱਚ। ਇਹ ਕ੍ਰਿਮੀਨਲ ਦੇ ਮੰਨੇ ਹੋਏ ਅਟਰਨੀ ਹਨ। ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ, ਕਿੰਨਾ ਚਿਰ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕ੍ਰਿਮੀਨਲ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟਿਸ ਕਰਦੇ?
I've been a criminal attorney for 27 years. My first 14 years was as a public defender, and the last 13 years I've been in private practice in our own firm. जी। ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ, ਸੋਸਾਇਟੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਬੜੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਫੀਲਿੰਗ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਸਟਿਸ ਦੀ, ਫੇਅਰਨੈਸ ਦੀ। ਔਰ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਫੀਲਿੰਗ ਹੈ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਕੁਝ ਸਮੇਂ ਵਿੱਚ, ਜਦ ਕਿ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੀ ਐਲੀਗੇਸ਼ਨ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹਨ ਕਿ ਕੁਝ ਅਨਆਰਮਡ ਲੋਕ ਮਾਰੇ ਗਏ ਔਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਅਗਰ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਉਹ ਐਲੀਗੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਲੱਗੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਕੋਰਟ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਸਜ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲੀਆਂ। ਲੋਟ ਆਫ ਪੀਪਲ ਫੀਲ ਐਜ਼ ਇਫ ਦੇਰ ਆਰ ਟੂ ਸਿਸਟਮਸ ਆਫ ਲਾਅ ਇਨ ਦਿਸ ਕੰਟਰੀ। ਰੀਸੈਂਟਲੀ ਦੋ ਐਸੇ ਕੇਸਿਸ ਹੋਏ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬੜੇ ਰਿਪਰੈਜ਼ੈਂਟੇਟਿਵ ਹੈਗੇ ਸਾਡੀ ਕੰਟਰੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੀਗਲ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਦੇ, ਔਰ ਬੜੇ ਕੰਟਰੋਵਰਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਐਂਡ ਦੇ ਵਰ ਫੋਲੋਡ ਐਵਰੀਵੇਅਰ ਇਨ ਦ ਕੰਟਰੀ। ਦੇ ਵਰ ਬਿਗ ਕੇਸਿਸ। ਇੱਕ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿਨੋਸ਼ਾ ਵਿਸਕੌਨਸਿਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਇਲੀ ਰਿਟਨਹਾਊਸ ਦਾ, ਔਰ ਦੂਸਰਾ ਅਹਿਮਦ ਆਰਬਰੀ ਇਨ ਜਾਰਜੀਆ। ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਨ ਦੋਨੋਂ ਕੇਸਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਬੇਂਸ ਜੀ ਨਾਲ, ਔਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਸਮਝਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਕੀ ਐਗਜ਼ੈਕਟਲੀ ਹੋਇਆ ਇਨ ਕੇਸਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਹਾਲੇ ਵੀ ਕੰਟਰੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਡਿਵਾਈਡਡ ਹੈ। ਕਈ ਲੋਕ ਫੀਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ ਕਿ ਬਈ ਇਹ ਠੀਕ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਫੈਸਲੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਏ, ਬਟ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ ਤੋਂ ਜਾਣਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਐਗਜ਼ੈਕਟਲੀ ਕੀ ਹੋਇਆ। ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ, ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਾਇਲ ਰਿਟਨਹਾਊਸ ਦਾ ਕੇਸ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਇੱਕ 25 ਸਾਲ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਬਲੈਕ ਅਨਆਰਮਡ ਬੰਦਾ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਦੀ ਕੁਝ ਫਾਇਰਿੰਗ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਅਗਸਤ 23 ਨੂੰ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਅਗੇਂਸਟ ਕੁਝ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕੰਟਰੀ ਵਿੱਚ। ਉਨ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ 17 ਸਾਲ ਦਾ ਲੜਕਾ ਕਾਇਲ ਰਿਟਨਹਾਊਸ ਬੰਦੂਕ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਉਸ ਦੇ ਦੁਆਰਾ ਉੱਥੇ 3 ਬੰਦੇ ਮਾਰੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਐਂਡ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਚਾਰਜਿਸ ਲੱਗਦੇ ਨੇ, ਉਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਮਰਡਰ ਦਾ ਕੇਸ ਚੱਲਦਾ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜਿਊਰੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਬਾਇਜ਼ਤ ਬਰੀ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ ਸਾਰੇ ਇਲਜ਼ਾਮਾਂ ਤੋਂ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੱਸੋਗੇ ਐਗਜ਼ੈਕਟਲੀ ਕੀ ਹੋਇਆ ਇਸ ਕੇਸ ਵਿੱਚ? Sure. First ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਆ ਕਿ there are two different legal systems. They're not based on color but on money.
ਜੀ।
If you have money, you can hire the best lawyers in the world. Get a Rittenhouse ਦਾ ਕੇਸ ਸੀ, ਉਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਡਿਫਿਕਲਟ ਪ੍ਰੋਸੀਕਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਸੀ, ਬਿਕਾਜ਼ ਸਿਚੁਏਸ਼ਨ ਇਹ ਸੀ ਈਵਨ ਦੋ ਉਹਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਗਨ ਸੀਗੀ, ਦੂਜੇ ਦੋ ਬੰਦੇ, one of them who got shot were also armed, and they testified at trial that they were armed. Here's the problem with the Kyle Rittenhouse case. The two problems. One is the judge was not very professional in his rulings. And two, the prosecutor could not really emphasize the one thing that all of America saw. Why was he walking the streets of Kenosha with an armed gun? They were unable to explain to the jury that itself invites violence. And that was the prosecutor's main case. Because you can argue self-defense if somebody else has a gun. And that was the problem with the Kyle Rittenhouse case. They weren't able to get to the jury and explain to them that Mr. Rittenhouse was not somebody who was defending himself, but he was somebody who was inviting violence. He had gone there with a gun. Unfortunately, the jury did not see it that way.
जी 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 you know ਅਸੀਂ it's very interesting but ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਥੋੜੇ ਜਿਹੇ ਕੁਝ basics ਸਮਝੀਏ first US which does every state have different criminal laws? There's no central law?
When it comes to criminal law,
Gee.
most of it is state-based.
Gee.
The Constitution says that the federal government is only given the powers that the Constitution gives it. Everything else is left to the state.
Gee.
So every single state will have different laws on criminal conduct.
अच्छा जी तो एक स्टेट मर्डर ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਡਿਫਾਈਨ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ ਦੂਸਰੀ ਸਟੇਟ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ there'll be difference in that?
Murder by its very nature, the one common thing is that somebody has died.
Gee.
But murder goes from premeditated murder, which is I'm leaving my house and I'm going to kill somebody. That's premeditated murder. In New York, that's punishable by 25 years, minimum 25 to life in jail.
Gee.
Then you have something called felony murder, which will come up in the Arbery case, which is either you or one of your co-conspirators in the commission of a felony, somebody is killed.
Gee. Gee.
And in certain states, it's such that if you're outside in the car waiting for somebody who's robbing a bank
Gee.
and they kill someone there, well, guess what? You're going to be charged with felony murder,
Gee.
particularly Texas. And a lot of times that does come up with results that are very unfair. Somebody who was not in the building, not part of the violence, wasn't aware there was going to be violence.
Gee.
You also have reckless homicide, meaning if you fire a gun into a group of people,
Gee.
you didn't intend to kill them,
Gee.
but you just fired the gun. Then you have manslaughter, which is you didn't intend to kill, but in the heat of passion
Gee.
or some other circumstance, you end up killing somebody.
Gee.
In New York, surprisingly, if you are convicted of manslaughter, you can get probation in New York.
अच्छा जी जिथे premeditated नहीं है on the spur of the moment कुछ ऐसा दी गल होगी
Yeah.
you can get away with the probation.
Yeah, if it's manslaughter. Now, the interesting thing about both Arbery and Rittenhouse is, I'm sorry, the difference between the two, and I disagree with what the prosecutor did in Kenosha.
जी.
I don't think anybody went out and intended to kill somebody. I don't think the defendants in the Arbery case said, okay, we're going to get in our house and we're going to kill that man. But, and they weren't charged. They were not charged with premeditated murder.
Gee.
They were convicted of felony murder mainly and something called malice murder in Georgia,
Gee.
where you don't need to prove intent. You don't need to prove I intended to do this.
Gee.
They got in the car. You don't have to prove they had intent to kill.
Gee.
But their actions,
Yeah, they were committing a felony and you know
in the course of that,
जी
somebody died.
ਜੀ 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 ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਹੋਰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਡਿਟੇਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਬਟ ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਜੋ ਸਾਡੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਨਵਾਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਸਾਡੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੋਂ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਤੋਂ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਊਰੀ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਵਾਟ ਇਜ਼ ਜਿਊਰੀ ਸਿਸਟਮ
The US Constitution requires
ਜੀ
that for a serious charge, you must be tried by a jury of your peers.
Okay.
And many civil cases are also tried, but I'm going to limit this to criminal.
Gee.
12 jurors, none of them they must all be citizens, and they cannot have any convictions,
Okay.
any felony or misdemeanor convictions.
Gee.
And they determine not the law, but the fact, what happened.
अच्छा जी
The example I always give to clients who have come to me after they've gone through a jury trial and they've lost, and they go, but wait a minute, but you know, this wasn't true. I go, neither I nor you determine what's true. The law says the jury determines what's true.
अच्छा जी ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜੂਰੀ ਹੈ 12 ਲੋਕ ਇਹ 12 ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਰੈਂਡਮਲੀ ਪਿਕਡ
They're not randomly picked.
Gee.
Usually there's more than 12. There are 14 up to 20 depending on how serious the matter is because you keep some in reserve.
जी.
After the attorney has made their last argument and the jury is ready to deliberate, the judge asks, should I get rid of some of the attorneys, some of the jurors, so they can go home? But at the very end, when the final deliberations occur, there are only 12 jurors.
जी. जी.
And they are selected in the New York selection system. New York is different, Georgia is different, and the federal courts are different.
अच्छा जी.
In the federal courts, attorneys don't really ask questions like this.
अच्छा.
But in the New York state system, we have a panel of jurors that come in, and we talk to them and we ask them questions to see if they can be fair and impartial.
जी.
That's what our questions are supposed to be about. But that's not what we ask.
जी.
We ask to get an idea of what they're thinking, and two, to give them an idea about our case.
अच्छा जी.
So when they are deciding what happened, they'll think about what we've said. Now, the first thing I said is that the jury decides the fact.
जी.
They decide what color pug you're wearing based on the evidence, and then the judge will tell them the law.
अच्छा जी.
And then their job is to apply the fact to the law and come up with a conclusion, which is the verdict.
मैं एक सवाल ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਣਾ ਚਾਹਾਂਗਾ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਕੰਪਲੇਂਟ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਬਈ ਕਿਆ ਉਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਵਾਈਟ ਜੂਰਰਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਕਿ ਕਾਲੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਜਸਟਿਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਤਾਂ ਜਸਟਿਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ is that a factor?
That is the history of the United States of America.
जी जी जी.
So I mean it's hard. Coming from India, it's hard for us to believe, and we come here, we work here, it's hard to believe that the police can behave like this, but they do.
They do.
And what I've seen with our community, it's not violence, but they ignore us. When we say something happened, and maybe it's because we cannot communicate effectively with them, they just don't listen. I mean, I've been working with the United States for some time, and one of the things we do is we monitor hate crimes, and I cannot tell you the number of times the police didn't charge and didn't arrest, but we had to come in there, and we had to push it, and then finally they made an arrest.
जी 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 जी. बहुत ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿੰਗ ਹੈਗਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਸਮਝਣ ਵਾਲੀਆਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਗੱਲ ਜਾਰੀ ਰੱਖਾਂਗੇ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖਦੇ ਰਹੋ ਦ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੋਸਟ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਾਇਲ ਰਿਟਨਹਾਊਸ ਤੇ ਅਹਿਮਦ ਆਰਬਰੀ ਦੇ ਮਰਡਰ ਕੇਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਉੱਗੇ ਹੋਏ ਵਕੀਲ ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਬੈਂਸ ਜੀ ਨਾਲ ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਅਗਰ ਕਾਇਲ ਰਿਟਨਹਾਊਸ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੇਸ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਹੋਰ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੀਏ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਫੈਕਟ ਐਸਟੈਬਲਿਸ਼ਡ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਾਇਲ ਰਿਟਨਹਾਊਸ ਦੇ ਦੁਆਰਾ 3 ਬੰਦੇ ਮਾਰੇ ਗਏ ਫਿਰ ਵੀ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਸਜ਼ਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਨਿਰਦੋਸ਼ ਪਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ ਬਿਕੋਜ਼ ਆਫ ਸੈਲਫ ਡਿਫੈਂਸ ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ ਅਗਰ ਇਸ ਕੇਸ ਦੀ ਸਿਚੁਏਸ਼ਨ ਸਮਝੀਏ ਇੱਕ 17 ਸਾਲ ਦਾ ਬੱਚਾ ਹੈ ਜੋ ਅਕ੍ਰੋਸ ਸਟੇਟ ਲਾਈਨਸ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਇਲੀਨੋਏ ਤੋਂ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਚੱਲਦੀ ਪਈ ਹੈ ਉੱਥੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਕੋਈ ਕਾਰ ਡੀਲਰਸ਼ਿਪ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਦਿਆਂਗਾ ਇੱਕ 18 ਸਾਲ ਤੋਂ ਘੱਟ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬੱਚਾ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ AR ਸਟਾਈਲ ਰਾਈਫਲ ਹੈ ਡੇਂਜਰਸ ਵੈਪਨ ਉਹ ਕੈਰੀ ਕਰਨਾ ਇਨ ਇਟਸੈਲਫ ਇੱਕ ਆਫੈਂਸ ਹੈ ਰਾਈਟ ਉੱਥੇ 9 ਵਜੇ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਕਰਫਿਊ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਣਾ ਫਿਰ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਬੱਚਾ ਬੰਦੂਕ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਖੜਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਐਂਡ ਆਈ ਵੁੱਡ ਆਰਗਿਊ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਵੋਕ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਲੋਕੀ ਅਗਰ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਪਏ ਐਨੀਮੇਟਿਡ ਹਨ ਉੱਥੇ ਕੋਈ ਬੰਦਾ ਬੰਦੂਕ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਖੜਾ ਹੈ ਇਟਸ ਰੀਜ਼ਨੇਬਲ ਕਿ ਕੋਈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਪੀਪਲ ਵਿਲ ਗੈਟ ਐਗਰਵੇਟਿਡ So, do you think it's fair to hold him not accountable for anything?
No, I don't. But as I so often say, life is not about fair. Again, in America, race is a major issue. Now, I can just imagine what would have happened if a 17-year-old black kid had gone to Kenosha with an AR-17 and says, I am protecting this place. The police would have shot him. Now, I can also imagine if a 17-year-old Desi child
जी
was there.
जी
And I can actually give you a concrete example. I believe, I'm not sure exactly where it was. I want to say it was in either Louisiana or in California. A Sadar owner of a hotel.
जी
And there were people in there that he didn't want, so he called the police. The police officer came, and his young son, from what I've been told, had a butter knife.
जी
The police officer's gun was out, didn't question, didn't ask, just shot him in the face.
wow
So that's the state of things
जी
in places outside of New York. Thank God I live in New York.
जी
We're a multicultural society here, but these things still exist. And I'm not saying that's the norm.
जी
I'm not saying that.
जी
But these things still happen here.
yeah
And Mr. Aubrey, Mr. Aubrey was in a. The reason he was chased was not because they thought he took something, but it was a young black man in the wrong neighborhood.
जी
That was his mistake,
जी
going into the wrong neighborhood. And that's why they chased him, no other reason.
that still exists
Yeah.
in this society. ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਾਇਲ ਰਿਟਨਹਾਊਸ ਦੇ ਕੇਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੱਜ ਦਾ ਰੋਲ ਸੀ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਾਫੀ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਕਈ ਲੋਕੀ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤੇ ਉਹਦਾ ਜੂਰੀ ਸਿਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ ਤਰੀਕਾ ਬੜਾ ਸਟ੍ਰੇਂਜ ਸੀਗਾ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਹੀ ਰਿਫਿਊਜ਼ਡ ਟੂ ਅਲਾਉ ਦ ਡਿਸੀਡੈਂਟਸ ਟੂ ਬੀ ਕਾਲਡ ਵਿਕਟਿਮਸ ਰਾਈਟ ਐਂਡ ਹਰ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਤੇ ਕੁਛ ਐਵੀਡੈਂਸ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਇਆ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫੈਬਰਰੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਾਇਲ ਰਿਟਨਹਾਊਸ ਹੈ ਹੀ ਵਾਸ ਟੇਕਿੰਗ ਪਿਕਚਰਸ ਵਿਦ ਪੀਪਲ ਲਾਈਕ ਦ ਪ੍ਰਾਊਡ ਬॉयਜ਼ ਰਾਈਟ ਕਿਸੇ ਬਾਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਸਾਈਨਸ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਐਂਡ ਸਭ ਐਂਡ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਐਵੀਡੈਂਸ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਸ਼ੋ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਏਗਾ ਇਸ ਕੇਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਾਊ ਡਜ਼ ਦੈਟ ਹੈਪਨ
A judge has a lot of power
Ji.
and discretion in letting evidence in
Ji.
or keeping evidence out.
Ji.
But in this case, I think one of the problems was the prosecutors either could not or were not able to or were kept from keeping out the core argument. He came here looking for a fight.
ਜੀ
He didn't come here. You don't arm yourself the way he armed himself. Because you have peaceful intentions.
With a semi-automatic rifle.
Yeah. And one of the things that you're asking me, I can't do it, which is to make a unreasonable determination, explain how that could be. It's unreasonable. It's just unreasonable.
Ji.
That's it.
ਜੀ 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 ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੈਲਫ ਡਿਫੈਂਸ ਦਾ ਡਿਫੈਂਸ ਹੈਗਾ ਫॉर ਅ ਡਿਫੈਂਡੈਂਟ ਉਸਦੀ ਤੇ ਬੇਸਿਕ ਪ੍ਰੈਮਿਸਿਸ ਇਹ ਹੈਗੀ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਹੀ ਮਸਟ ਨਾਟ ਹੈਵ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟਡ ਦ ਡੇਂਜਰ
Yeah. And that's the problem with the case. They were
Ji.
not able to explain that to the jury.
ਜੀ
That he created the danger.
ਜੀ 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 ਕਈ ਲੋਕੀ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਫੀਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਕੰਟਰੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਾਲੇ ਵੀ ਦੋ ਸਿਸਟਮਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਆਲਦੋ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਤਿੰਨ ਬੰਦੇ ਮਰੇ ਤਿੰਨੋਂ ਵਾਈਟ ਸੀਗੇ ਤਿੰਨੋਂ ਗੋਰੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਬਟ ਦ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਦੈਟ ਵਾਸ ਫॉर ਅ ਬਲੈਕ ਕਾਜ਼ ਬਲੈਕ ਲਾਈਵਸ ਮੈਟਰ ਔਰ ਜੋ ਬਾਇਸ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਡੇਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਫਟਰ ਰਿਟਨਹਾਊਸ ਕੋਰਟ ਛੱਡਦੀ ਹੈ he has become a celebrity in the country. जिस तरह उसको रिपब्लिकन पार्टी बुला के उसको एक हीरो दा और ट्रीटमेंट दिता जा रहा है. How do you look at that?
I think that with Donald Trump, his election and his base, it is now trendy
जी
to be a racist.
जी
It's out in the open.
Okay.
It's out in the open.
कि तुसी political correctness नहीं कर रहे हो तुसी आके खुल के बोल रहे हो जो थोड़े दिल में चेगा.
Right.
जी 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 that's a very
You have congressmen now saying, well, what's wrong with white power? Well, why can't I advocate for white people? Why that's what you have.
जी 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 तेजिंदर जी एक चीज़ थोड़े तो ज़रूर समझना चाहेंगे इस केस which one very important factor was that Wisconsin is a open carry state.
Right.
What is open carry?
Open carry means you're allowed to carry your weapon openly on your side.
जी जी
And that's legal. It is absolutely legal.
So anyone can carry a weapon?
Oh, in an open carry state, yes.
So अगर ये same चीज़ न्यूयॉर्क ਵਿੱਚ होई ਹੁੰਦੀ, it would have been different.
In New York, they would have been. It all depends what it is, and it all depends city or outside. I'm sorry, no, it doesn't matter where you are. If you are carrying a loaded rifle, and it is not in an area where hunting is allowed, that's a misdemeanor offense. You will be arrested.
In New York,
right?
Not in Wisconsin.
Not in Wisconsin. If you are caught with a loaded pistol on your even unloaded on your body. In your car, that is a felony offense punishable by, I believe, minimum 3 years in jail. And I remember when I first started, the charge of possession of a weapon was not taken as seriously as it is now. At that time, those cases were readily resolved with no jail time. Now they are looking 2 to 3 years in jail for a first arrest.
Actually, there are states where they are making it difficult to carry a gun, and there are states जिथे जिन्नी वड्डी बंदूक होए उन्ना वधिया.
Yeah.
ठीक है जी. You know, legal issues होंदे हैं, technical issues होंदे हैं जिस दे विच वो somehow बच गया. And there is evidence कि जेडे दो बंदे मारे गए, एक बंदा जेडा इंजर होया, they first attacked him, although he brought the gun to the fight. But I don't know what what precedent it creates कि भाई किथे भी कोई तोड़ी दूसरी thought वाले बंदे जेडे हैं ओ ऐदा protest करते पे तुसी बंदूका लगे पुज जाओ vigilante style. I don't know if it's the best thing, best message for the country.
I agree with you. But unfortunately, unlike India and most of Europe and Australia and most of the former Soviet Union, we have a gun culture here outside of New York and California.
Blue states हैं. असी एक गल जारी रखेंगे एक छोटी जी ब्रेक के बाद तुसी वेखदे रहो द वे फॉरवर्ड. द वे फॉरवर्ड इज ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ. ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੋਸਟ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ. ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ, ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੇ ਜਾਣ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਗਨਸ ਦੀ. ਇਹ ਸੈਕੰਡ ਅਮੈਂਡਮੈਂਟ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ I don't know holy grain ਹੈਗਾ ਇਸ ਕੰਟਰੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਹੈਗਾ. I don't know ਕਿਉਂਕਿ after repeatedly ਅਸੀਂ ਹਰ ਥੋੜੀ ਦੇਰ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੋਈ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੋਈ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਬਟ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਸੋਲੂਸ਼ਨ ਆਪਾਂ ਲੱਭ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ. ਕੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਹੈਗੇ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ?
There's nothing wrong with the Second Amendment. It says you have the right to bear arms. There's nothing wrong with the other seemingly absolute rights, such as the freedom of religion that we have. But nothing is absolute. If part of my religion was to punch you in the nose every day, clearly the law will prohibit my exercise of that religion. With guns, there's no middle ground in America. Either you want to take away everybody's gun or everybody should have a gun. Now, I think we can all agree everybody should not have a gun. Even the people in Texas will agree that everybody should not have a gun. Now, I own 3 guns myself. I'm a responsible gun owner. I keep the guns at home. I keep the ammunition away from the guns. I don't take them outside. But I'm exercising my right. But does it mean somebody who has a prior or 3 prior convictions for gunpoint robbery, should they be allowed to have a gun? In New York, a felon cannot own a gun. So there has to be some reasonable regulation of guns. You can't, I think outlawing guns is unreasonable.
But how about people having those assault weapons? What do they need those assault weapons for? They're not hunting with that.
I agree with you. They don't need the assault weapons. But some people use them for enjoyment at target shooting. Right? But there's also a large number of people out in middle America who don't trust the government.
And they're
saying, we're going to be ready
जी जी जी.
If anything happens, we're going to be ready.
जी. I've always heard this argument, and I don't know if the argument extends that people should be allowed to have fighter jets, submarines, nuclear bombs if they can afford. Because if they have to fight the government, they have to fight the government with those weapons, not with assault weapons.
The problem is the people who think like that are not very bright.
Okay. They don't make enough money to buy those stuff.
No, meaning that they don't realize that the government, at least here, we are the government. We make the rules. We have mechanisms to change rules. We don't need to resort to violence. If something is unreasonable, you contact your local congressman. You change your local congressman. We have a mechanism for change here in the United States. But there are people who believe that from the times of the 1700s, that we have the right to arm ourselves, and these rights are inviolate. There is no. You can ask the American citizen Japanese in 1945 if their rights are given by the Constitution are inviolate. They're not. The government can take away anything whenever they want.
एक racial history इस country दी हैगी है, which cannot be denied. There's been huge progress. No one can deny progress, but हाले भी from time to time ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ चीज़ racial undertones देखते हैं. ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਹਿਮਦ ਆਰਬਰੀ ਦਾ ਕੇਸ ਸੀਗਾ, one, as you said, their only problem was that this was a black guy jogging in a white neighborhood. ਹੋਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ problem ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗੀ. They're saying ਕਿ 2 ਮਹੀਨੇ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਕੋਈ ਚੋਰੀ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ and it looks like this guy did it. That makes no sense. ਉਸ ਦੇ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਟ੍ਰਾਇਲ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ closing argument ਸੀਗੇ, the defense attorney said a thing which shocked me. ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ this guy was hiding his dirty nails in those shoes. What is that assigned to? What is he alluding to?
That has not only perplexed you, but it has perplexed every defense attorney. Because one of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to alienate a jury. And if I'm sitting in the jury panel and I see an attorney for no reason whatsoever make a personal statement like that, that would just turn me completely around.
But do you think there were 12 member jury, 11 ਉਸ ਦੇ bites ਹੈਗੇ. Do you think she was trying to play with that racial card ਕਿ bhai he's a lesser human, kala, slaves, dirty nails is something that's associated with those things?
If she was, it really truly was something that I don't think anybody with intelligence would do it the way she did it. I mean, yes, if that's what you want to do, there are much better ways of doing that than the direct insulting way that she did it.
As if he was a lesser human being who deserves to be killed.
So I don't know why she said it, and it just makes me think maybe he didn't have good representation. And I think what would have been refreshing in the Aubrey case is if they just told the truth. If they told the truth, what's worse? We chased him, not we killed him, we chased him because he was a black man and that's the only reason, right? Or, well, we thought 2 years ago he did this, or whatever. They lose a lot of credibility when they say stuff like that. But it would have been refreshing to hear racism out in the open. And remember, we're in Brunswick, Georgia.
At least it's heartening कि उसनु guilty find किया गया. अगर नहीं किया होता तो that would have been a lynching right from the 50s.
We put way too much emphasis on a lot of these cases, and I don't mean to be to minimize a human life, but the problem really is not a legal problem. It's a problem of resources and the allocation of resources. The African American community and the Native American community historically have not had access to government resources that white Americans have had. That's what I think the conversation we need to have. If you take a look, there's a community out on Long Island called Levittown. Levittown, when it was created, the banks did not give the returning African American GIs from World War II mortgages to buy houses, but they gave it to the white returning GIs. And that is a systemic problem here in America, the issue of unfair allocation of governmental resources.
This is very important जो तुसी गल कही है क्योंकि साडी community which भी कई बंदे जो recent immigrants हैगे they don't tend to appreciate this fact कि these people have had some difficult past. ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀਤੀ ਅਸੀਂ recent ਇਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਇੱਕ show ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀਗਾ. There were 67,000 mortgages that were approved in that area, GI bill ਦੇ under. There were only 2 black recipients. Only 2. And ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ middle class ਬਣੀ ਹੈ 40s ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ or world war ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ with the government help, the blacks were deprived of that help. ਜਿਸ ਦੀ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਆ ਸਕੇ the way others have. It's not that because they're lazy or something else. Is that fair to say?
No, absolutely. But when you talk about our community, I think one of the problems in our community is we don't really go out and interact with people who are African American. We rely on what we see on TV and the images or what people tell us. And I think, luckily for us, our children aren't doing that. Our children are going out there in a diverse community and meeting people and getting along with everybody. But our first generation, we're not doing that, and we're set in our ways as to what we think.
Yeah, and that's what leads to bias in all levels of society. ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਜਾਰੀ ਰੱਖਾਂਗੇ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖਦੇ ਰਹੋ The Way Forward. The Way Forward ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ. ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੋਸਟ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ. ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ, ਅਸੀਂ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਅਗਰ ਉਸ ਕੇਸ ਤੇ ਜਾਈਏ, ਆਰਬਰੀ ਵਾਲੇ ਕੇਸ ਤੇ, so we would like to know, despite everything, those 3 people were found to be guilty. और उन्होंने अच्छी severe punishments देती गईयां.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what were the factors which were which they could not be done away with?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Key factors ਸੀਗੇ ਜਿਸ ਦੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਜ਼ਾ ਹੋਈਆਂ, but there are many cases where we have seen that people have been let go. ਅਗਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ racial ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਦੇਖੋ, so what were the incriminating factors in this particular case?
Oh, that's very easy. They had a video. Remember, when this first happened, the district attorney did not arrest these men
for 2 months.
Right. And when they were arrested, it's when the third man produced the video of what happened, and there was an uproar. That tells you, prior to George Floyd, we'd always hear, they're saying that the police are doing this. No, the police are good. No, they wouldn't do this. Now we know. Now we know what the police are doing.
ये बंदे नु सुत्ते घर पे कोई गोली मार रहा है, कोई दूसरे फ्लोर पे आके गोली मार रहा है. What are you supposed to do?
Now, mind you, I'm not saying all police. We have some very good, decent police officers, and I think some of the best police officers in the world work for the New York Police Department. But still, these things happen, and we need to train and educate the police and how to deal with people of color. ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੋਰ ਕਨਸੈਪਟ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਸਮਝਣਾ ਚਾਹਾਂਗੇ ਜੋ ਇਸ ਆਰਬਰੀ ਕੇਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਇਆ, ਉਹ ਹੈਗਾ ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨ ਅਰੈਸਟ ਦਾ. ਤਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਡਿਫੈਂਸ ਇਹ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿ what they were doing was right because they were doing a citizen arrest. Citizen arrest ਕੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ? In certain jurisdictions, if you see a crime or a felony, and they'll say what it is, committed in front of you, or you have a good reason to believe it was committed, you can hold somebody, but you can't shoot them. You cannot shoot them. Now, I'll tell you, in New York, if a police officer sees you walking down the street,
जी
he has to have a reason to stop you.
जी
He can ask you, hey, how are you? Where are you going? And based on that response, he may go further. But if you give if you don't give an answer, or you give a simple answer, he can't stop you.
जी
I've had this situation where I would walk around my house and up into an area where you really didn't see anything but white people.
जी
And I walked by 4 or 5 houses, and next thing I know, I have 2 police cars pull up and roll their window down and start talking to me. And they ask, where are you going? I say, I'm going this way.
जी
And that's it. And they go, well, will you stop and talk to us? Or will you please stop? I go, are you ordering me or are you asking me?
जी
They go, we're asking you. And I keep going. In the Aubrey case,
जी
if a police officer did not have a right or a cause to arrest Mr. Aubrey, how the hell does a citizen have the right to arrest him? Nobody saw that he had committed a crime. There was no proof. He was walking down the street, minding his own business. There was nothing about his actions that indicated any criminality.
जी 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 ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿਊਅਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਚਾਹਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਕਨਸੈਪਟ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਗਰ ਕੋਈ ਔਨਗੋਇੰਗ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਹੈ ਕਿਧਰੇ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਐਂਡ ਸਮਬਡੀ ਕੋਈ ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਦੇਖ ਰਿਹਾ ਉਸਦੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਯੂ ਡੋਂਟ ਹੈਵ ਟੂ ਵੇਟ ਫॉर द ਪੁਲਿਸ ਯੂ ਕੈਨ ਅਰੈਸਟ them ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਰੋਕ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਨਫਾਈਨ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨ ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਆਰਡੀਨਰੀ ਪਰਸਨ ਇਸ ਕੇਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਲਦੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਡਿਫੈਂਸ ਲਿੱਤਾ ਦ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਥਿੰਗ ਵਾਸ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਕਿ 2 ਮਹੀਨੇ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਇੱਕ ਚੋਰੀ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ which we think this person committed.
But we're not sure, but we don't know.
And that's not an ongoing crime.
And for there to be a chori,
Hanji.
somebody has to say, that's my property. He took my property without my consent.
Ji.
Now, the owner of the house where they're saying something was removed never, in fact, said nothing was missing.
Ji.
And whatever was missing was taken by another group of white kids that came to the house with a car. And we have them on video. But there was never, ever any allegation about Mr. Aubrey taking anything from anyone that didn't come from the defendants and was hearsay. Hearsay means somebody else said it, and that's not admissible in court.
Ji, ji, ji.
That's why, if you notice, the Aubrey jury did not take a long time in convicting them.
Ji, ji, ji. And we're happy, very happy with the conviction. We're very happy with the ruling.
Yeah.
Ji. Yeah. ਇੱਕ ਚੀਜ਼ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਈ ਰੇਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ I don't know when will this country get free of that or if it will ever. The defense protested black priests sitting in the courtroom to witness that. What is that about?
There is absolutely no basis for them to object to somebody sitting in the audience, because we have open courts unless there's a reason to close the court. And I don't see any reason why a pastor who's sitting there quietly observing the proceedings is not causing any problems, is not interrupting the proceedings. I see no reason why he should be removed. And that's why the judge didn't remove him. But remember, in the Aubrey case, when you have a poor case, when you in the Aubrey case, from what I saw of it, I could not see him not being convicted. It was very straightforward. So when you're a defense attorney, when you don't have the facts, there's a saying, when you don't have the facts on your side and you don't have the law on your side, you bang your hand on the table. And that is what they were doing.
Trying everything.
That's what the toenail was about. That's what objecting to the black preachers was about.
So they were trying to give it a racial thing somehow.
They were doing anything they could possibly throw. Now, I'll tell you, it's not unusual. About 15 years ago, in New York, a sick man was beaten in Richmond Hill in front of on Lefferts in front of a popular Italian restaurant.
जी.
He was beaten with sticks and fists and kicked by Italian American men who were there for the what is that? When the first child is blessed.
Okay.
I forgot what that's called. 2-year blessing of the baptism. I'm sorry.
Okay.
The baptism of the child. And luckily there was a British tourist who testified that he saw what happened,
जी.
and that they were yelling ethnic slurs at him, and he was an old man. And one man just came out, punched him right in the face, hit the ground, and they started kicking him.
जी.
And this case was tried, and the Queen's DA's office is wonderful. It was a DA named George Farrugia who really took it to heart,
जी.
what had happened to this man. And I remember I was monitoring it, and I knew all the defense attorneys because they were friends of mine.
जी.
And so I was monitoring the case, and when the complainant went up to testify
जी.
as to what had happened to him, how he'd been beaten, and they showed photos, but he had a part of this finger and a part of this finger missing
जी.
from a industrial accident that he had. And so the question that the question the defense attorney asked him was, didn't you lose those fingers when the bomb you were building blew up?
जी.
That's the question that the defense attorney asked.
Wow.
With no basis, nothing whatsoever, because he wanted to get that into the mind of the fact finder. So that's what it is. It's similar to that.
So was it heavily objected?
It was, but it was out there, and at the end of the day, I believe just about everybody was convicted of one thing or the other. The only problem, and it shows you about power in America,
जी.
right? These attorneys decided to forego a jury trial and allow the judge to decide as jury and judge. And that's why I always say a jury is a defendant of color's best friend.
जी.
Here in New York, I've had 6 on my juries.
जी.
I've had Punjabis, Gujaratis, Sindhis,
जी.
everybody on my jury,
जी.
and that's very beneficial because they understand a lot of stuff. But the judge found that the men didn't attack him because he was a Sikh, even though they were screaming racial epithets at him.
जी. जी.
And I'll tell you how it all started.
जी.
One of the women out there sees 2 older Sikh men walk by, and she says, "Hey, you're wearing my curtain on your head. Give me my curtain back."
Wow.
That's how the entire altercation started. But the judge
fall under the ambit of hate crime?
No. The judge found, yes, they were 2 of them were guilty of felony assault, but it wasn't a hate crime because the reason they were attacking him is because he threatened to call the police.
जी. 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 जी.
He threatened to call the police because he was being assaulted and attacked because he was wearing a pug.
ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਸਮਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਿਹਾ, ਬਟ ਇਹ ਸਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਹੈ ਹਾਲੇ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਚੀਜ਼ ਜਿਸ ਤੋਂ ਬੜੀ ਘਬਰਾਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਹੈਗੀ ਜਿਊਰੀ ਡਿਊਟੀ। ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਸਮਝਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ, ਬਹਾਨੇ ਬਣਾ ਕੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਨਿਕਲਦੀ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਅੱਜ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜਿਊਰੀ ਡਿਊਟੀ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਆਮ ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨ ਦੀ। ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਮ ਉਸਦੇ ਜੈਸੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ 12 ਲੋਕਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਵੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ, ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ, ਹੋਰ ਮਾਈਨੋਰਿਟੀਜ਼ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਹਨ। ਅਗਰ ਕਿਸੇ ਕਿਸਮ ਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਪਾਵਰ ਸਟਰਕਚਰ ਤੋਂ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਰੇਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਹੋਏ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਪੈਸੇ ਵਾਲਾ ਹੋਏ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਇੱਕ ਜੁਡੀਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਹੋਏ ਜੋ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਅਗੇਂਸਟ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਉਸਦੇ ਅਗੇਂਸਟ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਅਗਰ ਕੋਈ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਜੂਰੀ ਹੈ।
Yes, absolutely. And remember, judges hear the same thing over and over again every day. I didn't do it. This is wrong. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Now, I don't know whether I am cursed or blessed, but I've stood next to attorneys and I know their client didn't do it because my client did it. Meaning there'll be 2 or 3 defendants and 2 or 3 attorneys, and my client told me, "Mr. Bains, yes, I did it. That guy had nothing to do with it." And I'm not allowed to do anything because my client, I have to look out for my client. But I've seen how judges, their own lawyers,
जी
right, they're so jaded by the system that they don't believe them.
जी
I remember after the other guy was convicted of a charge. My guy was acquitted. Who did it was acquitted. But the other guy was convicted, and he goes to me, "Can you believe this guy telling me he's innocent? Do you believe it?" That's why the jury is so important. You have people who are not jaded by the system to come in and determine what their fellow citizen should be treated as.
जी
That's the best part of it. And as desis, we have to get involved. Do we want a jury of white men deciding our issues?
जी
And one of the fundamental issues that we've had here is there have been some sick kids whose hair was forcibly cut.
जी जी ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦੀ ਐਪਰੀਸੀਏਸ਼ਨ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ, ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡਿੰਗ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ
They don't
what it means
understand
to us.
what it means to us, right?
ਤੇਜਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬੜੇ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੁਝ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੱਸੀਆਂ ਸਾਡੀ ਆਡੀਅנס ਨੂੰ। ਆਮ ਸ਼ੋਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਿਊਅਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਕੁਝ ਕਲੈਰਿਟੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੋਏਗੀ। ਅਸੀਂ ਉਮੀਦ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਹੀ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਓ ਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਨ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਇਸ਼ੂਜ਼ ਤੇ ਐਜੂਕੇਟ ਕਰੋ। ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਮਚ ਫॉर ਕਮਿੰਗ।
You're welcome. I've been told this goes everywhere. I would like to say hello to all my friends in Chandigarh.
Sure ji, sat shri akal. Thank you so much.
Okay.